This guide covers all the actions Dawntrail Samurai learns from level 50 to 100 in order. We go over how each action is meant to be used and recommend ways to use it when relevant. We start with a tutorial on how to play Samurai at level 50, and then as we work our way to level 100, summarizing the changes in the rotation at level 60, 70, 80 and 90. In the final summary at level 100, we outline an optimized opener and explain how it leads into the general rotation, alongside 2-minute burst considerations. We also touch on the stat priorities of the Samurai. Now then, let's start with your combos. You have 3 different combo sequences at level 50 with both similar and different uses. Whenever you finish a combo, or more precisely, correctly use the final step of your combo, you're given a sen according to that combo. These sen are unique, so doing the same combo twice in a row will not award you a sen both times, unless you spend the sen in between combos. We will cover what sens are a bit later. Let's focus on combos for now. Your first combo, Hakase, Jinpu, Gekko, gives you a 10% damage bonus called Fugetsu, caused by Jinpu, as well as giving the sen, Getsu. Additionally, Gekko does extra damage when performed from behind your target. Your second combo, Hakase, Shifu, Kasha, gives you a 10% reduction in weapon skill recast times caused by Fuka, from Shifu, as well as the sen, Ka. Additionally, Kasha does extra damage when performed from the side of your target. Your third combo, Hakase Yukikaze, simply gives you the sen Setsu, and does not have a positional. The general rotation revolves around bringing both of your buffs up as quickly and efficiently as possible, and then keep refreshing them throughout the fight. Because the Shifu buff makes you attack faster, it is recommended to apply this one first, outside of cooldowns. I will explain what I mean by this a bit later. Focusing on just your weapon skills then, this means that your opener in a fight could look something like this. Hakase, Shifu, Kasha, Hakase, Jinpu. This then leads us to the Iaijutsus, the Sen Spenders. The weapon skill Iaijutsu is an action that changes into one of 3 actions depending on how many sen you have. It does not care which sen you have, just how many. If you have 1 sen, it turns into Higanbana, a damage over time effect, or dot for short, that lasts for a long time. If you have 2 sen, it turns into Tenkagoken, an area of effect attack, or AoE for short. If you have 3 sen, it turns into Midare Setsugeka. While it does a lot of upfront damage, and always critically strikes for even more power, Higanbana does significantly more over its duration. Keep in mind that effects like Higanbana actually memorizes your stats at the time of application, a feature known as snapshotting. So applying Higanbana with Jinpu's Fugetsu active does 10% more damage than applying it without it. Since you cannot pick and choose how many sen you want to spend, you have to use Higanbana when you have 1 sen if you want to use it. How this fits into the rotation is simple. If you have both buffs up and Higanbana is either not active or is close to running out, you want to use it when you can. If Higanbana is just fine, you can use Midare Setsugeka for a big hit. Using Iaijutsu does not cancel your current combo, and as such, this means your opener continues as follows. The 5 actions as seen before, Hakase, Shifu, Kasha, Hakase, Jinpu, and then we use Higanbana, followed by Gekko to finish the combo. At this point, the best option to continue your sequence with is Hakase Yukikaze, since both of your buffs are recently applied. Essentially, the rotation loop is to cycle through the 3 combos in some order to make sure both buffs are running, and to never use a combo if you already have the sen and won't be able to spend it in time. To break up this sequence a bit, we have the ability Meikyo Shisui. It enables you to use any of your combo actions freely 3 times. More precisely, you can use the combo finishers directly, without the prior combo steps, and the finishers will also give the buff associated with the combo on top. So Gekko will grant the damage buff, and Kasha will grant the speed buff. Using these 3 actions does, however, break your existing combo, so try to only use this ability after finishing a combo sequence. Note that abilities, like Meikyo Shisui, can be weaved in between weapon skills. The intended way to use Meikyo Shisui is to only use the combo finishers with it, meaning Gekko, Kasha and Yukikaze. In fact, the most valuable way to spend it is to only use it on Gekko and Kasha, although your rotation will not always pan out conveniently to do so. The reason those two are preferred is because they do the most damage and save you the most time, not to mention the fact that they reapply the buffs associated with them. For some examples of best practices with Meikyo Shisui, you can use it while not having any Sen, followed by Gekko, Higanbana, Kasha, Gekko, Hakase, Yukikaze, Midare Setsugeka. Or, as another option, if you already have Setsu, the Yukikaze Sen, use Gekko, Kasha, Midare Setsugeka, and then Gekko or Kasha depending on which buff you want to apply first. If you have both Setsu and another Sen, you can also start with a Sen you don't have, Midare Setsugeka, Gekko, Kasha, and go from there. Using one of the Meikyo Shisui usages on Yukikaze is also fine. In fact, it is not uncommon to do that at max level when optimizing for burst damage. Just keep in mind that the other options are better in terms of time saved overall, which, outside of coordinated raid optimization, naturally can result in slightly more damage. Meikyo Shisui also gives rise to a much more optimal opener compared to the one described earlier. Start a fight by using Meikyo Shisui as you run up to your target, and then use Gekko first, followed by Higanbana, then Kasha, and then Gekko again. The roll action True North can allow you to ignore positionals, increasing the damage of Gekko and Kasha in this opener. Alternatively, if your target will not live for very long, you can open with Meikyo Shisui, Gekko, Kasha, Yukikaze, Midare Setsugeka. The base opener I described earlier can still serve you well for any situation where you either can't access Meikyo Shisui, or want or need to save it for something else, whatever reason that may be. The reason we always start with Gekko first when opening with Meikyo Shisui is because when these two buffs are added back to back, the benefit of boosting the damage of Kasha typically slightly outweighs the potential benefit of casting Gekko slightly faster. Next, let's talk about AoE rotation. Your AoE rotation options are better when there are 3 or more targets. For that, you have 2 options. The first one, Fuga Mangetsu. This sequence gives you Getsu, the same Sen as the Gekko combo. It also gives you the damage boosting buff Jinpu applies. Your other combo sequence, Fuga Oka, works the same way, instead granting Ka and the speed boosting buff from Shifu. In terms of Iaijutsus, Tengagoken serves as your AoE option and should also be used on 3 or more targets. Higanbana is technically better to spread on 3 targets, but this is only true if they survive for the majority of the dot duration. Higanbana is also worth spreading on exactly 2 targets while we are on the subject. That said, this means your AoE rotation is to use the 2 sequences and then finish with Tengagoken. Take note, among these 4 attacks, that Fuga specifically is a frontal cone, while the rest are circles centered on you. With Meikyo Shisui, you can skip straight to Mangetsu and Oka. Next, let's talk about your defensive options. Third Eye reduces the damage of the next attack on you by 10%. This might not sound like a lot, but given an upgrade you get later, it is a great idea to get used to tapping this button whenever you expect to get hit, and its cooldown is also very short. NP is your only ranged option and can be used if you have to step away from melee range. Doing something is better than doing nothing after all. NP does not break your combo. Finally, let's briefly go over the role actions of the samurai. Second Wind heals you for a decent amount. Use this if you need healing, but consider holding it if the healer is going to heal everyone anyway. Bloodbath causes all of your attacks to heal you for a portion of the damage, which can heal for significantly more than Second Wind over a longer period. Try not to use both at the same time unless you absolutely have to, as otherwise you might lack healing later. Arm's Length allows you to block knockbacks and also slows the attack speed of attackers, which can be very helpful if you get some unwanted attention. Leg Sweep can be used to stun an enemy to stop them in their tracks, which can also sometimes be nice to give the tank a breather. Once again, True North allows you to ignore positional requirements for damage bonuses like for Gekko and Kasha for a bit. Finally, Feint reduces the damage done by your target for a bit, with physical damage being reduced twice as much. This can be useful whenever a boss looks like they're going to use a raid-wide attack or a big attack on the tank. Don't forget about this one, it is a lot more impactful than you might think. Now, to summarize Samurai at level 50, let's cover an actual boss fight opener and rotation. Up to 11 seconds before the fight starts, use Meikyo Shisui. Up to 5 seconds before, optionally use True North. Then, open with Gekko, Higanbana, Kasha, Gekko, Hakase, Yukikaze, Midare Setsugeka. This then leads to the general rotation. Simply work your way through generating each Sen one at a time, and once you have all 3, use Midare Setsugeka. Whenever Higanbana is close to running out, make sure to reapply it as close to it ending as possible if you can. Whenever you're down to 0 Sen, I recommend starting with the Yukikaze combo unless you need to refresh either of the buffs. Higanbana is also most efficiently reapplied with Yukikaze, since it is the fastest Sen to produce. Whenever Meikyo Shisui is ready, finish your current combo and then use it, and speed through building 3 Sen, Midare Setsugeka, and then build more. When fighting exactly 2 enemies, maintain Higanbana on both of them, assuming they will be around for a bit. For 3 or more targets, instead make use of Fuga, Mangetsu, Oka, and Tengagoken, using Meikyo Shisui on Mangetsu and Oka instead. Take note that Fuga is a cone in front of you. Now, with that, let's continue on past level 50. At level 52, you gain access to the Kenki gauge, and learn the ability Hisatsu Shinten. Whenever you use any of your combo finishers, or NP, you generate 5 Kenki. Yukikaze generates an extra 5 for a total of 10 Kenki, and you can hold up to 100. If you take damage while Third Eye is active, you also generate 10 Kenki, so if you can predict when you take damage, this can be incredibly powerful. Hisatsu Shinten, which I will refer to as simply Shinten, is an ability that simply deals 250 potency worth of damage to a single target. This means that you can consider 1 point of Kenki worth around 10 potency. You should only use Shinten while under the effect of Hugetsu, the damage buff from Jinpu, and if your party has any damage boosting buffs to share with you, it is beneficial to save Kenki to use multiple Shinten casts during such buffs. Otherwise, you can simply weave Shinten whenever you want. I would recommend trying to stay above 25 Kenki, as this can be helpful for actions you learn shortly. At level 54, you learn the ability Hisatsu Gyoten, shortened to simply Gyoten. At the cost of 10 Kenki, you quickly dash into melee range of your target and deal 100 potency worth of damage. As Gyoten costs 10 Kenki, it still produces 10 potency per Kenki, and so you can use Gyoten whenever you feel like it to close the gap on an enemy. Any damage loss from not having Hugetsu active is usually offset by the time saved not running to your target. Additionally, if party buffs are boosting your damage, you can use Gyoten to sneak in 10 extra Kenki worth of damage before the buffs run out, occasionally. At level 56, you learn the ability Hisatsu Yaten, shortened to Yaten. The reverse of Gyoten, this ability moves you a safe distance away from your target at the cost of 10 Kenki, but also deals 100 potency worth of damage. Additionally, Yaten also boosts the potency of your next NP cast, making it as strong as Shifu or Jinpu, and when considering it also generates some Kenki, it is actually just slightly stronger than them. While Yaten NP isn't a DPS game to perform necessarily, as NP requires a GCD to perform, the combo can heavily compensate for any potential damage loss you would get from normally running away from the enemy. Yaten should always be your default option for disengaging an enemy, and combined with Gyoten are both an important reason to always keep around 10 to 20 Kenki at hand at all times. At level 60, you learn the ability Meditate. While Meditate is an ability, it activates the GCD just like a weapon skill, removing the possibility of weaving it entirely. The only purpose of this action is to use it at a point in a fight where you both cannot attack anything, but you're also safe to stand wherever you are while in combat. Every 3 seconds, it generates 10 Kenki, so when fully channeled, this results in 50 Kenki over its duration. It is important to keep in mind that you should not use Meditate outside of this specific scenario. Even if it is incredibly convenient to gain that much Kenki, simply repeatedly casting NP is more valuable if there is an attackable target. Since level 50, you've unlocked the Kenki abilities, namely Shinten for translating the resource directly into damage, Gyoten for closing a gap, and Yaten for widening it. Make sure to regularly weave Shinten between your GCDs and keep enough Kenki for whenever you need Gyoten and Yaten. Besides this, your rotation is completely unchanged. At level 62, your Kenki generation is boosted to an absurd degree, and you learn Hisatsu Kyuten, shortened to Kyuten. At this level, all of your weapon skills, except Iaijutsus, generate an extra 5 Kenki, meaning those that already generated 5 now generate 10, including NP, and Yukikaze generates 15. Third Eye still only generates 10. Kyuten is an AoE alternative to Shinten that is superior on 3 or more targets. This means that in a situation where you may expect AoE combat, saving Kenki for Q10 may be better than spending it all on Shinten outright, as Q10 specifically generates more value per Kenki than all your other spenders when there are 3 or more targets. At level 66, the potency of Hakase, Jinpo and Shifu are increased slightly. This does not change your rotation. At level 68, you learn the abilities Ikishoten and Hagakure. Ikishoten is a long cooldown that immediately grants you 50 Kenki, enabling you to start a fight with 50. At this level, this does not change very much for your rotation or opener, as you need to be already in combat to access it, making using any of this Kenki on Goten, for example, very awkward. Because of this, Ikishoten is weaved after your first GZD in combat. Hagakure is a niche ability that gives you some control over your Sen. It spends all of your Sen as an OGZD to generate 10 Kenki per Sen spent. You should only use this ability if you're sure you know what you're planning to do with it. One example case you can use Hagakure for is in a dungeon or alliance raid. If you have 2 Sen, for example, but both of your buffs have run out, then simply using Hagakure to start a boss fight with a clean slate may be easier to deal with. At level 70, you learn the ability Hisatsu's Guren, shortened to Guren. As an OGZD, this does a large amount of damage in a line, where the AoE component is 3/4 as strong. On a 2-minute cooldown, this should be used whenever it is available. Fortunately, the cooldown lines up perfectly with Ikishoten, so you should have no worries saving 25 Kenki for this attack specifically. Make sure to only use Guren while affected by Hugetsu, as it is affected by the damage boost. Since level 60, you've acquired an incredible boost to your Kenki generation. While your general GZD rotation is still completely unchanged, Kenki is now an even greater part of your rotation as a whole. You also now have Q10 as an AoE spender for Kenki that beats Shinten on 3 or more targets. Your opener has also become significantly more explosive. Use Meikyo Shisui up to 11 seconds before combat starts. Then use Gekko and weave Ikishoten and Guren. Then use Higanbana. After that, use Kasha, and then finish the opener with another Gekko into Hakase, Yukikaze, Midare Setsugeka. Remember, you can weave Shintens in between as you see fit. At level 72, you learn the ability Hisatsu's Senye, shortened Senye, which is a single target alternative to Guren, and they also share cooldown. Guren should be used for 2 or more targets, and Senye should only be used for single target situations. At level 74, you learn the trait Enhanced Iaijutsu, which reduces the cast time of Iaijutsus enough that you can now fit a single OGZD after an Iaijutsu. It also causes Tenkagoken and Midare Setsugeka to grant you Tsubame-Gaeshi ready for 30 seconds. You also learn the new weapon skill Tsubame-Gaeshi, which does nothing on its own, but turns into Kaishi-Goken or Kaishi-Setsugeka while you have Tsubame-Gaeshi ready, depending on which Iaijutsu activated it. At any time, you can use these Kaishi attacks to repeat that previous Iaijutsu, as long as you use it within 30 seconds. Generating a new Tsubame-Gaeshi ready overrides the previous one, but any other weapon skill, including Higanbana, can be used while holding on to this attack for when you want to use it. This can be incredible for holding an extra large attack for a burst, but you can also just use this to double down whenever you use an Iaijutsu. You can also plan out this Kaishi attack to more smoothly plan out reapplying Higanbana as close to it running out as possible. Needless to say, you should be using every Tsubame-Gaeshi you are ever given. At level 76, Meikyo Shisui can now hold 2 charges. This grants you way more flexibility in when you should use Meikyo Shisui, allowing you to plan it so that you only use Meikyo Shisui when you can set it up to be only Gekkos and Kashas. You can also use them in bursts. At level 78, Hugetsu and Huka get a small boost to their effects. The only difference you should feel from this is that Huka will make your GZD go slightly faster. At level 80, you learn the ability Showa, and the Kenki gauge is expanded to hold 3 meditation stacks. Whenever you use an Iaijutsu, you gain 1 stack. Additionally, every tick of Meditate also grants a stack. Showa can be used to spend all 3 stacks as an OGZD. Keep in mind that Tsubame-Gaeshi does not grant meditation stacks. You should use Showa whenever it is available on the first OGZD opportunity, although you can delay it slightly to fit in a raid buff if you anticipate they might be coming soon. Make sure you don't miss out on meditation stacks for it though. While Showa has a 15-second cooldown, it is extremely unlikely you will generate 3 new stacks within 15 seconds without employing degenerate strategies like using Meikyo Shisui to perform 3 Higanbanas in quick succession. Something you would likely never do anyway. As such, you can mostly ignore the cooldown of Showa. Since level 70, you've gotten a single target alternative to Gurren in Senye. After every 30 Iaijutsu, you also have access to Showa as an OGCD strike. Every time you use Tenkagoken or Midare Zetsugeka, Tsubame-Gaeshi allows you to do it again, although you can also hold this attack for up to 30 seconds if you like. Finally, Fugetsu and Fuka got a small boost, your Iaijutsus take less time to cast, and you can hold an extra Meikyo Shisui. This changes your opener quite drastically. Up to 14 seconds before combat starts, use Meikyo Shisui, and up to 5 seconds before, use True North. Then open with Gekko weaving Ikishoten, then Kasha, then Yukikase into Midare Zetsugeka weaving Senye, followed by Kaishi Zetsugeka weaving Meikyo Shisui again. Use Gekko weaving Shinten, then Higanbana weaving Shinten again, Kasha weaving Shinten, another Gekko weaving Gyoten, then finish with Hakase, Yukikase weaving Shinten, into Midare Zetsugeka weaving Showa, Kaishi Zetsugeka. If you happen to be coordinating raid buffs at all, take note that you have just about enough time to build one full Midare Zetsugeka, use it, and build another one before the next minute starts, which allows you to then start each minute's burst with the Kaishi Zetsugeka from that Midare in the middle, alongside Meikyo Shisui, another Midare and Kaishi into setting up Higanbana, Kasha, Gekko, Hakase Yukikase, Midare Zetsugeka, Kaishi Zetsugeka. At level 82, Third Eye permanently upgrades to Tengetsu. Yes, there is an extra N in there. When you're actually hit during the 4 seconds of the effect, Tengetsu turns into Tengetsu's Foresight, in addition to granting the 10 Kenki Third Eye always granted. Tengetsu's Foresight causes you to heal a decent amount over the next 9 seconds, and also take 10% less damage for the full 9 seconds as well. This does not change how you use this, but it makes the reward much more impactful. Defensively at least. At level 84, the potency of Gekko, Kasha and Yukikase are increased slightly. This does not change your rotation. At level 86, your AoE combo starter Fuga is permanently upgraded to Fuko, not to be confused with your attack speed buff Fuka. Fuko generates an extra 5 Kenki and is also a circle AoE like most of your other AoE options, aside from Gurren. This upgrade does not really change the way you perform your AoE rotation however. At level 90, Ikishoten is upgraded to grant a 30-second buff that enables your new weapon skill Ogi Namikiri, which is a weapon skill that is functionally identical to an Iaijutsu, down to even granting a meditation stack. It additionally always critically hits like Midare Zetsugeka. When Ogi Namikiri is used, it automatically changes into Kaishi Namikiri, which you should always use immediately after. Take note that Ogi Namikiri does not have a cooldown, and so its cooldown is effectively tied to Ikishoten. As such, you have 30 seconds after every Ikishoten to plan when Ogi Namikiri is best to use. Take note that Kaishi Namikiri is actually a combo with Ogi Namikiri and must be used immediately after Ogi Namikiri, unlike the Tsubame-Gaeshi Iaijutsus. Additionally, for AoE situations, keep in mind that Ogi Namikiri is a frontal cone attack. Since level 80, the main addition to your offensive arsenal is Ogi Namikiri. The way this changes your opener is that I suggest you use Ogi Namikiri, weaving Showa, into Kaishi Namikiri right after you set up Higanbana. You can also do exactly this every even minute, although maybe not with a Showa specifically. At level 92, Hakase permanently upgrades into Gyofu, increasing its potency slightly. This does not change your rotation. At level 94, Second Wind is upgraded to heal you more, and the potencies of the rest of your single target GCDs, as well as Higanbana, Midare Zetsugeka, Kaishi Zetsugeka, Showa, Ogi Namikiri, and Kaishi Namikiri are all increased. Finally, Gurren and Senye's cooldowns are reduced to 1 minute. This does not really change your rotation aside from Senye featuring in every burst instead of every second burst. At level 96, Ikishoten is upgraded to also grant Zanshin ready for 30 seconds, and turn into Zanshin until this effect is used. Zanshin is an ability that does damage with an AoE component, but costs 50 Kenki instead of just 25. Naturally, Zanshin should be used whenever it is available, and effectively means, at this point, that Iaijutsu no longer produces any excess Kenki for any other action. Zanshin is also a frontal cone attack. If you are ever, for whatever reason, put in the position of having to choose, make sure to use Senye first, as it has a strict cooldown where Zanshin has a 30-second window to be used in. At level 98, Feint is upgraded to last 15 seconds instead of 10. This does not change how you use it. At level 100, Meikyo Shisui is upgraded to also grant Tendo for 30 seconds, or until it is spent. While affected by Tendo, Tenga Goken is replaced with Tendo Goken, and Midara Setsugeka is replaced with Tendo Setsugeka. Both of these turn Tsubame-Gaeshi into Tendo Kaishi Goken and Tendo Kaishi Setsugeka, of course. Ultimately, both of these actions just do way more damage than their regular counterparts, and should be made use of when offered. Now, to round off, let's first talk about an opener followed by general rotation, as well as how to work with the 2-minute burst, and finally, let's briefly touch on stat priorities on gear. At the moment, Samurai has 2 common structured rotations for coordinating with raid buffs. These work with either GCD with Fuko of 2.14 or 2.08. Due to the much simpler design at 2.08, I will focus on this style. The opener is, however, the same between the two. Let's begin. Up to 14 seconds before combat starts, use Meikyo Shisui. Up to 5 seconds before combat starts, also use True North. Then open with Gecko, and if you intend to use a gem draft, use it here. Then use Kasha, weaving Iaijutsu, Yukikase, then Tendo Setsugeka, weaving Senye into Tendo Kaishi Setsugeka, weaving Meikyo Shisui again. Then use Gecko, weaving Zanshin, and use Higanbana. Then Ogi Namikiri, weaving Showa into Kaishi Namikiri. Then Kasha, weaving Shinten, Gecko weaving Gyoten, and finish with Gyofu, Yukikase weaving Shinten into another set of Tendo Setsugeka, Tendo Kaishi Setsugeka. This then leads to the general rotation. The Samurai rotation alternates between burst phases and cooldown or filler phases. The cooldown phase is to simply generate the 3 sens, use Midara Setsugeka, but not Kaishi Setsugeka, and then another set of 3 sens, and then whirl into the next burst phase. The notable difference between the 2 different speeds of rotation is that the slower one, due to not being able to produce a full set of 3 sens in time sometimes, have 6 very slightly different bursts, one at every minute increment, assuming 0 downtime or mistakes. The simple way to explain it is that a portion of the burst Meikyo Shisui is used sooner to finish up the Midara Setsugeka as the rotation slowly sort of falls behind, and the only way to catch up is with an additional Meikyo Shisui that comes around eventually around the 6th minute. However, this explanation perhaps makes more sense when we look at the faster 2.08 GCD rotations burst. On the odd minute, right after generating the last sen for your second Midara Setsugeka in the cooldown phase, you go into the burst, which starts with Meikyo Shisui into Kaishi Setsugeka, right into Tendo Setsugeka, then Gecko, Higanbana, and then Tendo Kaishi Setsugeka, finishing up with Kasha, Gecko, Gyofu, Yukikase, Midara Setsugeka, Kaishi Setsugeka. And then right back into cooldown phase again that goes exactly the same way as before. Note that you can move Higanbana slightly around with the placement of the Tendo Kaishi Setsugeka to make sure Higanbana is kept active if, say, something in the previous burst messed with it. On the even minute, again, right after generating the last sen for the second Midara Setsugeka, weave Meikyo Shisui, Kaishi Setsugeka, Tendo Setsugeka, Tendo Kaishi Setsugeka, Gecko, Higanbana, Ogi Namikiri into Kaishi Namikiri, finishing up with Kasha, Gecko, Gyofu, Yukikase, Midara Setsugeka, Kaishi Setsugeka, and then start from the beginning again. Notably, Iaijutsu and Senye should be used on cooldown during all this, Zanshin should be used during the burst, and Showa and Shinten can both be weaved as it makes sense without overcapping on either resource. But, if possible, holding them for a buff window is always beneficial. Finally, following this rotation for 6 minutes will likely lead you to have an extra Meikyo Shisui, which you can use to extend that even minute burst even further. Now, while you're still learning the basics of the job, or even learning the basics of a harder fight, or generally playing outside of coordinated groups, the importance of getting your rotation perfect according to this strict sequence is much lower, and doing so-called freestyling while focusing on the fundamentals can be a lot easier to handle. Maintain Higanbana, use your cooldowns, and get the most out of Meikyo Shisui as you're able. Remember, you don't have to be perfect immediately. Downtime in a fight can also cause this strict rule set to fall apart a bit, and you may have to think out of the box to make the most of your toolkit in these situations. Now, for AoE adjustments, on 2 or more targets, replace Senye with Gurin. There may also be a benefit to be gained from maintaining Higanbana on both targets. However, you may have to get creative with the rotation to make things continue to line up. On 3 or more targets, replace your single target combos with Fuko, Mangetsu, and Oka. Replace Shinten with Kyuten, and strictly use Tenka Goken as your Iaijutsu finishers, or Tendo Goken with Meikyo Shisui. The rest of your toolkit should be used as on single target. Finally, regarding stat priorities, take note that in nearly every single case, item level beats out optimal secondary stats. This means you should always prioritize gear with higher item level, as long as it has strength on it. After that, start by aiming directly for the exact amount of skill speed you need to reach the GCD you desire. There are 2 common options, and the slow option is a GCD of 2.14 with Fuka, which requires between 677 and 783 skill speed. The fast option is a GCD of 2.08, which requires between 1254 and 1360 skill speed. If you want to follow the rotation presented in this guide, you should aim for the fast one. Then, after that, your priority is critical hit, then determination and direct hit. Determination and direct hit are almost identical in value, with determination being a tiny bit better, so try to aim for them to be about equal with determination slightly ahead. If you aim for the faster style, it is incredibly unlikely you will randomly stumble into more skill speed than a GCD of 2.08. But once you reach the GCD you desire, you should aim to avoid any further skill speed. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, before Dawntrail, Tsubame-Gaeshi was a cooldown you could hold up to 2 charges of that generated 1 per minute, similar to Meikyo Shisui. Back then, Tsubame-Gaeshi had to be used immediately after the regular Iaijutsu, just like with Ogi Namikiri as well. Dawntrail changed this by first making Meikyo Shisui enable Tsubame-Gaeshi in general, and then by 7.05, just flat out removing the cooldown from Tsubame-Gaeshi entirely.